Absolutely. The list is long, Aditya, isn't it? That's really the point that Kartikeya is making. From when you come from that, how do you look at India, which has done it so successfully, for 75 years? How can you look at India and cast such aspersions? And more importantly, all right, if you say it belongs to the person who wrote it, how do you allow that person to come in and write something like that, clearly knowing the profile of the person who's writing it? That's after a point, causing unnecessary, social discontent in India by doing that, because that content gets consumed in India. And many Indians tend to get misled into believing that the whole of America thinks that. But that's one media organization giving a platform to one particular writer.
Well, one needs to realize that the Western press has had an agenda for a very long time. They have always seen India from the prism of this colonial mindset. And they always believed, in the last many decades, even though it's been 75 years of India's independence, the Western press has seen India as a state of snake charmers, which is very known. And they haven't really developed from that particular mindset. They cannot see India as a progressive democracy, one of the largest democracies, and clearly, achieving its goals every passing day. One of the biggest economies in the world. So there are time and again occasions where radical elements, not only radical elements, but terrorists have been given platform by the Western press. The biggest of all examples has been the Taliban's and Haqqani network, Sirajuddin Haqqani, who wrote an editorial in the New York Times. Imagine that. Similarly, we have had several different occasions where even in, when Article 370 abrogation happened in Kashmir, none of the Western press cared to look at the policy as how discriminatory this was, how it was mistreating the lower strata of the society or the women of Jammu and Kashmir. It was not about equality and justice, but the abrogation was about equality and justice. Never did we see them highlight that. Because conflict has been an industry, and the Western press also gains from any kind of a conflict, blaming India completely without any facts or truth to it. So there is no time for truth for the Western press. They do not have the bandwidth or the capability to in fact go into it. And we need to also check the kind of funding they receive, the kind of access that the deep state has to these Western press, and the agenda that is involved with it. There have been several attacks on Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on the Indian government, on Indian democracy, on Indian constitution and Indian parliament. But why? Where are the facts and figures is the biggest question that we are asking here on this coverage.
You see, let me go by what the author has written in the Time magazine. Because the Indian government has decided that capturing Amritpal Singh, a 30-year-old Sikh political activist, is more important than people's human rights. He is not a political activist. He is questioning country's integrity. He is inciting violence.
Yes.
He is talking about secessionism. And he is creating political and social unrest in Punjab.
Yep.
So first of all, that is completely wrong. So it's a poorly researched article. Then second important thing, it says injustices committed by the government against minorities in India. Where is the case? You have to cite an example. This is like you get up in the morning and you write a fable. It is not like that. Then it goes on to say that the confrontation turned violent. Afterward, protesters claim police officers had charged them with batons. Look what happened in Ajnala. The police showed restraint to a point where senior retired officers said that they should have used batons there. But police had the sensitivity. But I think author does not understand the sensitivity. They had Granth Sahib in front of them. Granth Sahib is considered Guru. It's the most holy thing in the whole Sikh ecosystem. How could police have lathi charged an unruly crowd when Guru, the Granth Sahib, was there? So Amritpal was weaponizing a holy book, which is considered a guru. So I think it was a crime committed by Amritpal. So that has not been written. Let's go point by point, I think in every paragraph there are mistakes, but I'm so surprised that the Time magazine has allowed this plethora of untruths to be passed as truth. And then it says, a dashing but a possibly dangerous religious leader. Amritpal, a dashing but a possibly, it's not wacko. This is not the Midwest of America, where you have thousands of acres, people create their own subcults.
This is not the wild, wild west.
This is not wild, wild west. So this is not wacko, This is something about the Indian security. And Indians know, Indian duly elected government knows how to work on it. And then it says, I wrote about the Indian government's frequent use of anti-national rhetoric to defame social protests and justify human rights violations, including with nationwide protests against Citizenship Amendment Act. One has to understand that Citizenship Amendment Act has a context. It is a context of persecution. Yesterday, a second Hindu doctor has been killed in Pakistan. All of us know what happened after Taliban took over Afghanistan. There has been a Sikh exodus from there. Population of Hindus was roughly around 12%, Aditya, in Pakistan, 12 or 14%.
Yeah, close to that.
Close to that. It was in double digit. It is less than 2% in Pakistan. If India is not going to accommodate them, then who is going to accommodate them? And secondly, it presupposes that the whole state is in unrest. Punjab is a peaceful state. There has been no social unrest after
it just had elections with which had a very peaceful transfer of power, Aditya, didn't it? In that sense, one is that the article is poorly researched on every single count that Kartikeya was just talking about, and the other is the fact that how do you let this happen when the issue is simmering in a country? You're literally messing with the peace and tranquility of a country by allowing this to happen.
Well, the basic simple fact is that the Time magazine or the Western press or the West as a whole cannot digest a vibrant democracy as India, which is continuously rising, economically or otherwise. They just cannot absorb that fact. And secondly, it is a sustained campaign against India's democracy, against India's interests, and India playing a leading role globally and showing the path ahead. Right. We've seen continuously in comparison to India, as Kartikeya was also mentioning, in Pakistan, the state of minorities, the persecution, the human rights violations that is continuously happening. We've been reporting here on News9 about how Hindus are being deliberately and forcibly being converted in Sindh province of Pakistan by Islamist radicals like Mia Mittu and several others. Not just Hindus, Sikh community and Christians are also continuously suffering. We know of a Sri Lankan, who was publicly lynched in Pakistan. Similar such episodes have happened continuously. Now, this is only about the minorities. This is also about the ethnic minorities, and apart from Punjabis, others, including Baloch, including Sindhis, including Pashtuns, and people in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Have we ever seen Time magazine or the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Western press as a whole do a sustained campaign or an article reportage on how the minorities in Pakistan are suffering, how there are rebel attacks that are continuously happening, and in Afghanistan as well, how Pakistan has sheltered Haqqani network, Taliban, and several such terror groups that has been conveyed in the United Nations and the FATF as well.
And I think, I have to say this, though it's slightly outside the ambit of this article, but it reflects the bias of the author. There's a bit of an Hindu phobia also. Cultural assertion of an Hindu identity is not opposed to the secular nature of the constitution. Cultural assertion of a Hindu identity through a ritual, feast, procession is not a challenge to a multicultural society of India. Cultural assertion of a lived Hindu life in which you are unapologetic about who you are is not opposed to the ideals of these constitutions. The word secular and socialist were inserted when there was no democracy in India for those 2 years. It was suspended. But was our constitution not secular and not socialistic in nature? India was secular constitution by inception. India was socialistic by its policy. India is a plural society. If you look at the interfaith history of Sikhs and Hindus, it goes more than 500 years. And more than that, I think by using Khalistan or by using Amritpal as a metaphor of anxiety in the minorities, I think author has not done his research. He is a fringe element, a product of Pakistan's ISI, which is trying to foment trouble in Indian diaspora. Right. We have been doing a lot of programs, Krishna, together. There has not been one protest in favor of Amritpal. Tell me there has been one rally in Delhi. Tell me one Gurudwara which has come out in favor of Amritpal. All the Akal Takht said was, if you have detained people, release them. And they were released. And they were not sent to long custodies. People who were detained were released. It was a precautionary measure. People do that. Punjab suffered from Pak-sponsored terrorism and it came out of it.
Right.
And I think Pakistan cannot digest it. The proxies who operate from other countries can't fathom how Punjab is peaceful. Punjab has its own problem, but duly elected government is taking note of it. And even the problem of chitta, which on films and the plays and the songs have been written on it, on drugs. So much of Pakistan, because I really don't want to convert this debate about Pakistan, it's about the poor authority of the author. It is about the poor research of the author. And it is an anti-Indian and it's an attitude which attacks the idea of Indian democracy. It's like I really hate to say that Area of Darkness by Mr. Naipaul, or it is like when the Brits were leaving this country, can India stay as a nation, to challenge us that are we a nation? India is a old nation but a young country. Didn't we have civilizational sense, Aryavrat and other things? So I think the Western academia fails to account for those lived understanding, and that is poorly reflected in it. But my God, to have this article printed in a magazine like Time just shows that how poor the editorial vetting of this institution is.